Sydney's contact tracers are scrambling tonight to prevent a new COVID cluster. A student nurse who was infected with the virus worked at 2 Sydney hospitals. More than 100 patients and staff have been forced into isolation. There were 22 other COVID cases reported today. All of them are linked to known clusters. The Premier is still cautiously optimistic that the lockdown could end as scheduled after 2 weeks.
2 Sydney hospitals plunged into their own partial lockdowns after a student nurse tested positive for coronavirus. The woman was not vaccinated.
We know that the student nurse worked whilst infectious on a number of days.
The 24-year-old worked across several wards at Fairfield and Royal North Shore hospitals. Patients and staff potentially exposed to the virus have been tested. So far, the results are negative, but it's early days. There are 22 new cases, all of them are linked. 6 were out in the community, while infectious.
To date, our fears about huge escalation haven't materialised, and we certainly want to keep it that way.
Although there is a venue of major concern. 5 cases are now linked to the Crossways Hotel in Sydney's inner west. Today it underwent a deep clean. Anyone who visited last Wednesday to Sunday is now a close contact.
They must immediately get tested and isolate for 14 days, regardless of the result.
4 new cases are linked to the West Hoxton party, bringing the total number to 39. The outbreak at Christo's Pizza has risen to 4. New venues on high alert include Bunurong Gymnastics, Auburn Central Shopping Centre and Club Maconi. And authorities are keeping a close eye on the Doncaster Hotel. Catching public transport has always been considered high risk since the pandemic began. Despite the repeated warnings, more than 2/3 of fines handed out yesterday were to people not wearing masks. As a result, expect more police on board.
We really encourage people to make sure that they wear a face covering, a mask, whilst they're on the public transport system. Our police will see this as a priority over the next 2 or 3 days.
The news has angered commuters doing the right thing.
They should think of somebody else's health, you know?
I don't mind masks. If it helps us, whatever, because I'm sick of lockdown. So just wear the mask, end of story.
But it may not be for both hospitals with the potential of a new cluster. Mark Reddy, ABC News, Sydney.
They've been vital for tracing COVID contacts, and now QR codes are going to be extended. Once the lockdown is over, you'll still be expected to check in every time you go to school, work, the gym or the shops. But as contact tracers are discovering, it's remembering to check out that's fast becoming a real issue.
Already second nature for many, you'll soon be seeing a lot more of these. QR codes will be mandatory across a string of new sites, including at shopping centres.
I expect them to put that system in place as a matter of urgency.
In the wake of the Bondi Junction super spreading event, some didn't wait to be told.
Generally, people have been pretty good in signing in. We also have roaming security guards as well, who are encouraging people to check in at each of our entry points.
A lot of people that come into the centre are more than willing to sign in. A lot of people do sign in when they come into the centre as well as in the store.
From July 12, you'll need to scan the QR code to go to the shopping centre, and again when you enter each store inside. You'll also need to sign into workplaces, along with universities, TAFEs and schools. Those going to the gym or even placing a takeaway order will now be required to use the app too. And while checking in is becoming routine, there's another issue.
Unfortunately, people don't check out. This is a real problem. So people check in, but they don't check out.
In the first place, it wasn't obvious, and I never checked out for a couple of months. Now, check in, check out.
Here's a tip for those who tend to forget. Open the Service New South Wales app. Click on the settings wheel at the top right, then select the Notifications tab. There you'll find checkout reminders. Switch them on and choose how long after arrival you'll want an alert. It will help prevent contact detectives wasting hours of precious time. Amy Greenbank, ABC News, Sydney.
Further north, communities along the border have spent the day dealing with the impacts of the Queensland lockdown. Let's go to Leah White now in Tweed Heads. Leah, there are concerns about a man who breached the Sydney lockdown and travelled to the Tweed.
That's right, Juanita, and there are also residents who have been concerned about the incident, and there's been a level of frustration as well about what's been described as quite a selfish act given the ramifications it could have for residents and businesses in the border communities whose lives and livelihoods are so severely impacted when there are border closures. Now, anyone entering New South Wales from Queensland is required to have a border declaration pass, and vice versa for anyone entering Queensland from New South Wales. And it's the first time this has been in place for both directions, and it means border commuters now need 2 different declaration passes. But the residents we've spoken to say they're happy to try and understand and follow all the new guidelines, because above all what they don't want to see is a return of a hard border closure.
A hard border closure for us really adds another layer and makes things really difficult.
It is very confusing, especially because it keeps happening, keeps changing, so yeah.
So no doubt there'll be a lot of residents and businesses here in the Tweed watching the situation unfold over the coming days.
Thanks, Leah. Leah White reporting there. Almost half the Australian population is now in lockdown because of COVID. Queensland has recorded 3 new infections, all linked to known cases. In the Northern Territory, Alice Springs has gone into a 3-day lockdown after an infected minor travelled through the airport. But there were no new cases today in the Northern Territory. That minor is being counted in South Australia's numbers. He's infected 4 members of his family in Adelaide. And there's 1 new case in WA today, with Perth and the Peel region remaining in lockdown. Many of Sydney's homeless will get a roof over their heads throughout the lockdown. The state government will spend $11 million to provide hotel rooms for people sleeping rough until Friday next week. It comes as advocacy groups are overwhelmed with requests for help.
Prepping the essentials for another crucial expedition. With bags packed, this outreach worker is ready to hit the streets. His mission, to make sure no one is sleeping rough.
People have been very happy that they've got somewhere dry to stay at the moment as well as safe.
Sydney's lockdown has forced the Wayside Chapel to strip back its operations to focus on getting the homeless into temporary accommodation.
So there's more and more people who are living in untenable, insecure housing who are ending up, through pressure that we're all feeling through this lockdown, ending up on the streets.
At Wesley Mission's brand new facilities, 39 of its 40 rooms are already occupied. It opened just as the city went into lockdown. A timely reprieve for dual heart attack survivor Andrea Salona.
It's nice to have people who care about you, and it's nice to have somewhere to stay.
The new rooms come equipped with heating, clean beds and their own bathrooms, a first for the facility. About 300 people sleep rough on Sydney's city streets each night. Now, the state government says it will help to house them into hotel rooms during lockdown. Advocates say it's a welcome move, but warn it's not a long-term fix.
We know when we get long-term housing outcomes in place for people, then everything else flows from that.
An important message at a critical time. Nakari Thorpe, ABC News, Sydney.